Hello, welcome to the November 25th, 2025 Club Cubase live stream. My name is Greg Undo, and I'm the host of the live stream today. If you have not attended a live stream before, you can simply ask questions in the live chat field or always send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, realize that my ability to answer questions in a real-time manner may soon be eclipsed with the number of questions that come in. We will go through all of the questions asked chronologically. So if you don't see an immediate response to your question, if we could avoid asking the same questions repeatedly, that would be appreciated. Just kind of speeds things up so we get through more topics. When asking questions, if you could specify which version of Cubase you're running, so if it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, or other Steinberg programs, which version number, so if it's 13, 14, or 15, and also which operating system. That information is often helpful. We should have an index of all of the topics covered in today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field several hours after the live stream ends. And if you wanted to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams, you could go to cubaseindex.com, and we want to thank Jan from Stockholm for creating that website. We have two people that serve as moderators. They're not Steinberg employees. They just do it out of the goodness of their hearts. So we have Jazz Dude and Agent K. And so we want to give special thanks to them. And also we'll give an extra, appreciate our gratitude for Jazz Dude for his efforts with the unofficial Cubase Nation Discord, which is a wonderful resource of information for people in the Steinberg community. So links to tutorials, articles, downloads. So a great resource. So once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America. I primarily focus on Yamaha products in the United States. And I'm the host today. I'm presenting from just outside in the United States, just outside of Washington, D.C., in Alexandria, Virginia. And if you're watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself and let us know where you're from. And as of the last live stream, it seems like most people's usernames have changed. So if you see a different username for yourself when you enter, if you give us your old name, if it's different, just so we know who you are, it's always great to see people that are on. Today is the last live stream of the month because Friday is a holiday in the United States, so it's the day after Thanksgiving, or known as Black Friday in many other countries, or day of plug-in sales and lots of other sales. So we won't be having a live stream, and since it's on Friday, since it's the last live stream of the month, today we will do our Zoom social meetup in about 3 hours. I'll go ahead and paste the links. And for those that are watching, in case the link isn't pasted, the text isn't pasted, we can come over here. Let's go ahead and we could, I think, view the invitation here. Let me see if I could find the we won't start it now, but here's the meeting ID and password. So for people that maybe can't make this live part, and this will be live, it's not going to be recorded, but we can see the meeting ID and the password for the meeting. So that will just be for Club Cubase attendees and people who watch. So beyond November 25th at like 5 p.m., this won't be good, but I just want it. Sometimes when we paste the link in the chat can take some time. So just wanted to make sure that you could see the ID and password here, and I pasted it in the chat field as well. Now with that, we will go ahead and get started. All right. So we see Yasin Trabi Music. We have my Logify on, just says Team Cubase. Michael Marshall sending greetings from Somerset in UK. Tim K, joining from Zeist in the Netherlands. His cat buddy is waving hello to my cat Steven, Mark Ravenstock, Stella, and other pets. And he's the participant formerly known as Tim K. All right. You see Fly V on. Vince from Winnipeg, thanks for joining. All right. Always great to see Terry Gray on from Minneapolis. All right. We have at CH6229 saying hello from Nova Scotia in Canada. Roland Stuff sending greetings from Sussex in England. Benny Gran joining from Sweden. Great to see you on. All right, and Benny has the first question today, and it is, can we get, all right, sorry, my chat field jumped. Is there a setting that makes the VST instruments automatically appear when I switch to another instrument track that has a VST instrument loaded? So there isn't a preset, and there isn't a function to do that. So if I switch here, I may want to edit the particular track and not have the instrument itself just kind of open up automatically. Like if I just wanted to select a track, I may not want that particular instrument menu appear. There is a key command for edit VST instrument. So if we're here, we could just say, okay, I want to go to, where we could just, you could just come right over here and you can see it in kind of the routing tab. But if we go to your key commands, there is just a quick key command for edit VST instrument. So you could assign a keyboard shortcut for that. But I think, if you are constantly, anytime that you wanted to arm a track for record, but, you switch, you may not want that particular instrument. And it's actually part of, like, I have my CC121 here. So if I just want to open up the instrument, there's a button just assigned just quickly to open and close VST instruments. So you could have the key command function like that, which I think makes more sense. All right, we see Jazz Dude on. Always great to have him on. We have Uno Memento joining from Finland. Barndor Recording Lawrence checking in from Rhode Island. And we see Tillen Samuel just asked, hello, Greg from Reunion Island. Is there a plugin in Cubase similar to Waves, NLS, or Slate Digital's virtual channel to add an analog touch to the signal? So there's a number of different plugins that are available that could do that. So say if we come over here, every single channel has a channel strip. And if we come over here, we could have like a tube compressor or vintage compressor. So you could have, and then you also have saturation, where you could say, okay, I want it to be magneto, which is like tape saturation, or if you wanted to have a different tape saturation plugin, a different algorithm, or tube saturation. So that's on every single track. You could have your EQ, so different kind of analog compression. There's also going to be, once you go to the limiters section, you'll have different limiters as well. So if you wanted a maximizer, you could do stuff like that. Now, some of these are also available in standalone plugins. So, but with the channel strip, you can get, a full noise gate. You could come over here and say, okay, I want an envelope shaper. We could change the order of these as we see fit when we go to our EQ. So every channel strip kind of has this almost like 500 series modules and software. And there's a number of different plugins. So if you want, like tube distortion, grungealizer is also, if you go to Quadrifuzz, this is a multi-band distortion. We'll show you some of the other ones. So if we come over to Magneto 2, so great analog tape machine that you could run it through twice to get dual mode. So lots of great processing that's included with Cubase for all those different functions. I'm just curious where Reunion Island is. Sounds interesting. All right, so we have Ray KH72 sending greetings from the Netherlands. All right, we have John Barry joining from southern coast of England. We see Michael Teams joining from Weatherford, Texas, where it says it's a beautiful day so far. Great to see Michael on. All right, so Thomas Freddie says, why is Cubase don't have a ghost note? So if you mean, there's different definitions for ghost notes. So let's say a lot of times if people are coming from, I think, FL Studio, and let's say if we have a bunch of notes here and I don't want to see pitches that don't have notes on them, we could just come, so let's, we can come over here and we could just choose to kind of hide the pitch visibility option. So we say, okay, let's show pitches with events. Then I'm only seeing the notes that have events versus all of the events. So we could show pitches that only are within the scale, or only the pitches that have events, or we could just simply turn the pitch visibility off and see all notes. Let me know if that's what you mean by ghost notes. It may not be called ghost notes, and ghost notes could also be like notes that are very low in volume, which you could do as well with velocity. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Thomas, Freddie. All right, we see Val joining from Vienna. He's just saying, how are y'all? And he's seeking Michael Teams to see if he said that the right and correct Texas way. We have Rick France joining from Pacific Northwest. And he just says, hi all, happy Tuesday. Really appreciate Greg and all the rest for great sharing and questions. All right, we see Tony Chunzo joining from Australia. Thanks for joining us so early in the morning. All right, so we see a question from Val in Vienna. It says, can I change the colors or visual representation on MPE? All right, so let's say if we're here, and let's come over and we'll just double click, say we want to do like MPE editing on this particular track. So I'm not sure if the colors can be changed. But let's say if I put a line in there, I'll just turn volume down a bit here. So I think that this, so let's say if we want to snap and we want to put in. So I'm not sure if the colors can change, but let's see if we go to our note expression. If we go and we put in, let's say, panning, and let's do tuning. So I think each of these may show different colors. So let's come over here and show the note expression data. So if we want to, but I think that I'm not sure if we could actually change like the colors within the editor. I don't know of a way to do that off the top of my head. All right, wonderful to see Rick Ballantyne on, wonderful composer from Charlotte. Thanks for joining us today. All right. See, can we get a tool modifier for eraser in a key editor? Studio One has this. It's just a small feature request. Will be easy to implement too. I'm just curious if you need a tool modifier. So let's say if we have a note here and we want it to erase the note. So if we hold down kind of the actual Alt or Option key, we could split. But if I just double click on a note and we have this option disabled, which is the default behavior. So instead of going into like the note expression editor, so now I could just double click and erase the note. So I could double click to enter a note, and then I could double click on the note to erase it. So let me know if you still think it's necessary to use a modifier key, or if it's just actually faster just to, okay, I want to double click in a blank space to have a note, or just double click where I don't even have to use my my non-mouse moving hand to get rid of the note. So again, we could just double click and double click the default behavior to erase the note without any modifier key. So let me know if that makes sense for you. All right, so we see Val just says, lucky I got the at Y42 handle the day they introduced handles. I'll have to look into it. See if we all need to get handles. All right, so we see Val's received 1 gallon of king cake ice cream. All right. Sorry. My chat field jumped. Okay, Una Memento asks, I have a vocal track and a chord track. When I put generate harmony voices on the vocal track, I automatically get a soprano and an alto. For some reason, they don't follow the chords very well. Okay, so let's say if let me open up something that has kind of sense, more of a musical sense. Okay, so I'm going to just generate a chord track here. All right, so one is kind of just make sure that the chords are actually, you know, make sense. So let's say for here. You stare at the wrecking ball. So let's say I just want to do chords on that particular phrase. So we'll come over to my audio, and since we have the chord track laid out for us there, we're going to say generate harmony voices. We'll do 2. All right, now one of the tricks that you could do, so you know, if I did 2 voices, it's going to give me a soprano and an alto. And if you wanted to try different voicings, if you come here, let's say to the chords tab. So let's say, okay, I'm going to come right over here and we'll go to the chords. And at this point, we'll see under the follow the chord track, we could just change the voice to like a tenor. And now as we play, so if you want to try, and when you do this, so you could switch it from soprano alto to tenor bass, and there's also an alternative soprano alto tenor bass, so you get like one of the typical 4 voices and also an alternate. So try doing an alternate, and that will give you different options when generating harmony voices. All right, you see Rick Ballantyne saying, "Hey to Jazz Dude." All right. All right, so Val says, lately, since Cubase 15 in the control room, I can only hear a mix of my Q sends and my mix out, stereo out, not any of them individually. All right. All right, so let me just see if... Let's see if we can set it up here, give a quick test. All right, so we will Okay, so let's say I want to build, I have some Q mixes here, so I will just check my audio connections in my control room. So let's say I have drums, guitar, and we'll call this bass. Okay, so we're going to go to our Q send. So I will select my first track and my last track, and I'm going to kind of right click here, and we'll go to all Qs, and we'll say activate the Q sends, and I want to use the current mix levels and the current pan settings. Okay, so let's build a quick cue. So I want all of my drums to be fed more into, I'm going to activate the cue link. And I want the bass to go more into the bass headphone mix, and let's say our guitars into our guitar headphone mix. Okay, so let's go ahead and listen to our cues. So let's say we have our mix. And then I'm just going to switch to the Q1. Let's say it's Q2, which is our drums. All right, so, and we could just kind of check here to make sure. So there's our bass in the cues. And let's get to Q Mix 3. Let's say, okay, we want the guitars. So now when we kind of switch between the cues, so that seems to be working. So if it's not kind of behaving as expected, you know, try going into the cues here and make sure that it says cues. All right, so let's say my drums may sound a little weird, so let's come over here. So now we'll probably hear the drums louder because we're not listening to the mix. And now let's get to the bass Q mix. So make sure that each of the Q mixes here, that you don't actually have one of these set to the mix as opposed to the cues. Because if this is set to the mix, then the bass player's hearing like your control room mix and not their independent mix. So check that out. And, you know, also make sure that when you go into your audio connections, you know, regardless of what the connections are, so if you're monitoring in a control room, you should be able to audition any of those changes, even if they're not routed. But check your physical connections if you're monitoring through like a headphone amplifier system. All right, we have Anthony Beheeler checking in from Bedford, Virginia. So thanks for joining. Nice to have a fellow Virginian on. All right, we have Imad Salsa joining, saying hello from Jordan. All right, we have Julian Degin, says Julian from Paris here. Could you show me how to convert several key switches to program change? For example, A1 equals program 1, A sharp 1 equals program change 2, etc. Thanks. Okay, so let's So I'm not sure if you want to do it on like an input transformer. So let's come over and see if you wanted to do it like on live input. So let's come over here. I'll just add, let's go to our transformer. So let's say we come over, we'll open up our transformer panel. All right, so we want to, so I'm not sure if it has to be like, so if it has to be those particular notes, I mean, we can take, in general, we could say type is equal to note, and we want to transform that into type, and we can say, let's put it to program change. All right, so let's say if we're here, now we want to take notes, let's open up, let's say a MIDI monitor on this. And when I hit notes on my keyboard, we can see that this will automatically send program changes. So we could just do that where the MIDI note number is automatically assigned to program changes. So if we play chromatically, and if I open up just my virtual keyboard here, we can see that as I hit a note, that we are just taking this MIDI note message and converting it to, so if you have to have like specific notes to specific program changes, we could do that, but you might have to do kind of multiple conditions for that, or if you generically just want a MIDI note message that comes in to convert to program changes, you could just set up like the input transformer to do this. So in this way you could do it on input. You could also do this in a logical editor for existing notes if you want to take those notes and convert them to program changes. I wouldn't imagine that'd be so practical, but you could do it like that. So again, we want to take incoming MIDI notes. So first thing is we go to the input transformers you find under the routing. We could go to like a track, or we can make it global. We could open a panel. You have to make sure that we activate this, and we'll say type is equal to note, which will be the default. And then we want to convert the MIDI note messages. We'll say type is, let's say set to fixed value programmed. We'll say type, and we'll just say program change, so MIDI system common message. So now as we come over here, we could just have that automatically change. So let me know if that's helpful for you, if you need like specific notes to specific program changes, and we can show you how to do that. All right, so we see from at is Sizzy1 says, hi Greg, happy Thanksgiving. Can you explain how to set up the new articulation set up with other VST instruments such as contact libraries? All right, so when you come over here, you could just say, okay, let's go to, I don't have a contact library. I don't think I have any other libraries, but if we go to the expression map setup, we would just say, okay, let's add an expression map. So let's say, okay, we want this for contact. We'll say guitar, whatever. All right, now we want to add sound slots. So, you know, you could say, okay, I want this to be a slide. So you could actually just kind of say, okay. And as we come over here, we could say, okay, I want to add another sound slot. So let's say I want this to be the harmonic on a guitar. So we'll say, okay, let's add the harmonic, and that will automatically add the particular instrument. So you can go through all the different key switches. Once you're here, we could assign the MIDI note. We could click on a MIDI note here and be able to assign the MIDI note. or you could actually just click on the note that's going to be doing the key switch right there, and you could just kind of build up all of your articulations. Unfortunately, unlike other instruments which can automatically extract all of the expression maps, I don't think Kontakt does that yet. But that's basically how you would do that. You could put these into different groups if you wanted to. You could put in delays if necessary, so that everything could be in time. But check, there's a lot of expression maps already created for Kontakt instruments. All right, we see Tim Weinheimer on from Mission Viejo, California. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we have the Button Man says, hey all, still at work at the moment, but try to get home for the Zoom. Have a great session. Thanks for joining us. We see the Button Man is Michael Pierce. All right. We have to learn everyone's new name. All right, Soren is just saying, hi Greg, Soren in Sweden here. I won't be able to attend the Zoom meetup, not even stick around here for so long. Can you answer my mailed in question now, or do you do it later? So Soren's question that was mailed in, let me get to it real quick here. All right, it says, hi Greg, from Soren in Sweden here with Cubase 15 Pro and Absolute Collection 6, including Groove Agent 5, among others, and some more. I have a problem with the Groove Agent 5 since 5th of November. I think there is a huge update with the drum packages then. Can you please watch a video I find here and see if you can help me? So I think in Soren's question that some of the instruments in Groove Agent 5 weren't showing up in the full version of Groove Agent 5, but were showing up in the Groove Agent 6 SE. So I think, make sure that you have the latest versions of make sure you had the latest versions of Groove Agent 5, because I think that there was an update to it recently around the time to accommodate some of the new library functions when using it in conjunction with Groove Agent 6 SE. And also go through, and I ran into this with another customer, so if we go to like the MediaBay, go to the instruments that are kind of misbehaving a bit, and try just say if Jazz Essentials was one that wasn't showing up, sometimes doing a rescan disk just on that particular library that's misbehaving will often refresh it in the old ones. But there was a lot of content updates, as well as I believe a Groove Agent full version update recently, so make sure you have all of the latest versions and you'll probably see it in your My Products or Updates in the Steinberg Download Assistant. So check that out. All right, I'm going to paste the Zoom social link again. Again, we'll be doing it about 1 hour 26 minutes. All right, so we have Raj joining from Hyderabad, India. Thanks for joining. See, Val just says to Dylan Samuel, says, I love Magneto. Just default on every track, and the buses totally can refer to that tube. Just put it on there. So basically it's NLS or SSL Neve mixed. All right, we see Michael Teams giving kudos to Jazz Dude for the unofficial Cubase Nation Discord, and is giving Jazz Dude 1 gallon of chocolate cherry mash ice cream. All right, Yope Production says, hi Greg, greetings from Switzerland. Glad to produce music with Cubase 15 Pro. Thanks for joining us on the island. All right, so we see Reunion Island is in France off the Indian Ocean there. Is it Mauritius, I think is how it's pronounced, but I'm probably wrong. It's in the Indian Ocean. Thanks for letting me know. It's always great to see people from different parts of the world joining. Thanks for being on the live stream today. All right, so we have Val asks question: shortcut logical editor request. When duplicating a track, making the name field automatically be selected and cleared. So I'm ready to type jumbo time saver for me. Is that possible? Okay, so I think we could do that. So let's say we have like this. We'll call it scratch guitar. All right, so we want to duplicate this track and have the name, like I think, and have the name field ready to type. Okay, so I want to come over. So let's go to our key commands. And let's make a macro. So I'll make a new macro. Okay, so let's come over here. Let's add that command. And I think if we go to okay, so let's see. We have this this track called Scratch Guitar. So let's see. So I'm going to duplicate track and then rename the first selected track. Let's see if that works. All right, let me just try. There's maybe a duplicate track. Yeah. Okay, so let's give this a shot now. All right, so then you could just type right in. So again, just 2 steps in the macro, and you could assign this macro to keyboard shortcut. So we want to do project, duplicate tracks, and then edit, rename for selected track. So if I have this track selected, I can run this macro, and we'll call it Y42. So let me know if that's helpful for you. So there's that macro for the 2 steps: project, duplicate tracks, and then edit, rename first selected track. All right. See, Bratman Studio. See, just it says also went for the ASUS 31.5 Pro Art monitors. So maybe Rick got his new. Perhaps he got his new new Macintosh computer for studio. All right, John Makes Beats says, is there an easy way or streamlined way to create sample chops with ping pong looping enabled? I prefer that to time stretch as a way to close gaps of silence. All right, so I'm not sure what you mean by ping pong looping. All right, so we'll just take a look at it here. All right, so let's say to create sample chops with ping pong looping. Enable, I prefer that to time stretch as a way to close gaps of silence. All right, so let's say we have a number of audio recordings here. So we have all of these. So I'm not sure if you want. So I'm not sure if I understand the ping pong looping term, but let's say if we go to like our hit points, that we could set perhaps like a quick threshold, and at this point we could say automatically make regions. So we could choose to create regions or events. So let's say, so we'll come over here. So let's say, okay, we want to edit our hit points. And if you wanted to, create events from that. But yeah, maybe, sorry, John Makes Beats, if you wanted to give me a little more information on what you want to do, if it's going to be more for drums or vocals. But, we could take like the hit points there in the sample editor, and, we could create slices based on hit points. We could, add markers. We could create a groove. We could make regions based on the hit points. So if I'm here, we could just say, okay, let's just make regions. And then if we wanted to, look at your different regions, you could do that as well. So maybe give me a little more information so I can understand it better. Sorry about that. I'm being ignorant on my end. All right, so Flyvy is asking, is making an audio montage in Wavelab create a CD/mixtape mastered all in one file with the separate tracks? So we could think of, if we have in Wavelab, we'll open this up. So let's say if I was doing kind of my mixtape or CD or album assembly. So let's come over. So this will be my one montage, and my montage is going to reference each of these particular audio files. So my montage is a reference that is a file that will reference audio files. These files could be stored in a project folder when we're starting, so that everything is in one unified folder, or they could be kind of spread throughout. So this will still be different files when we burn a CD. So if we go to our album and we go to burn a CD, I don't have a CD drive connected to my computer, that when we go to burn a CD, it will take these audio files from this montage file. The montage with the separate audio files will be burned to the compact disc. If we wanted to have a data file, what we could do is just come over here, and since we don't have a CD, we could just simply create, let me just go to my album wizard here first, sorry. So go to functions, we'll go to our album wizard. It's going to put all of our PQ codes in. So now when I go to CD, we could make it a DDP image, and this is DDP stands for Disk Description Protocol, and this is basically the data file that the CD is made from. So a lot of people won't actually send a CD to a duplication house. They would send a DDP file and upload that by FTP or email it, or send it by Dropbox, some sharing site, and then CDs could be duplicated, but this would be just a data file of the CD. But basically, the montage is referencing individual files. If you want everything collectively into one single file, you would just make and generate a DDP image from that. All right, so we see maybe just a clarification. So we see something like the shadow chords in FL Studio while writing notes. So if we, let's say if we have a chord track here, all right, and I'm just going to drag this down to an event here. Let's just glue these together. Okay, so if we have notes here in our MIDI editor, so let's say I just draw in a couple of notes here. So what we could do is if we go to the scale assistant, so we could say, okay, I want to use the chord track, or we could use the editor scale. So if I have the chord track, and I could come right over here and say, okay, let's look at the chord track at the top. So if I say use the chord track, or we could define a key. So if we say use the editor scale and say, okay, I want this to be in D major, and we could say, okay, I want to snap pitch editing. So now I can't write in notes that are out of the key. And if I choose to use the chord track, I could say, now I can only write in notes that are within the chord. So we could just kind of snap the values here. So as I would move notes, it would automatically stick to notes only within the specified chord. So if you wanted to come over here to your scale assistant, you could do that. And if we say, okay, we only again want to come over here and see the notes that are there, or we only want to see pitches from the scale assistant. So if we come over here, now we could only see the notes that are specified to be in D major here. So I can't write a note that's out of the scale. So let me know if that's helpful for you. Thanks for the clarification. All right, so we have Soul Sound Official just saying hi, Greg and all. I have to get used to so many new names. Okay. Sorry, my chat field jumped. Okay, so in the back in the same area. All right, so we see from Contrast Power 6302 says by ghost notes he means being able to see the other notes in the piano roll, so we could build 808s based on the chord notes. And FL he wants multi-part editing enabled, so he could place the 808 exactly in. So yeah, I think what we just did with the scale assistant will allow you to do that. Terry Gray says, hey Greg, any word on Windows 15? I'm guessing it'll be in 2026. That would probably be a safe assumption. Realize that when Cubase comes out, all those features are going into Nuendo, plus many more features, like specifically for post-production and game audio and sound design type functions. All right, so we see from DH Ruve SWM says, I know about this. I desperately need a tool modifier for eraser, please. Tried to understand, Greg. You tried Studio One, which is smoothness. I mean, I think that double clicking is equally as fast. I've never tried Studio One. Haven't had any need to, but I think that double clicking is just as fast. So Lazarus asks, hello Greg, why does Cubase 14 Pro not run Waves plugins on Windows 11 OS? So I run Waves plugins in my Windows 11. So make sure that that you have the 64-bit versions installed and that you had the VST3 versions installed by default on Windows platform. And if you're running on on a Windows platform, you may have to go to your VST plugin manager and enable VST2 plugins. They're disabled by default, but I run, Cubase runs Waves plugins. Just make sure that they're VST3 and that they are 64-bit. All right, Un Momento has been granted 1 gallon of peppermint bark ice cream. All right, Soren asks, Greg, can you explain the ASIO guard? Explain what the work ASIO guard does. I sometimes get low bars and all but high bar ASIO guard on my laptop in Cubase Pro 15. All right, so let's say we have a number of different tracks in our project, right? And I have plugins that are scattered on all of my projects, but I'm going to record onto this project. So when we set our buffer, what we could do is we come over here and we can set our buffer for our audio interface. So let's say, okay, I'm running at 512 samples. So that's our buffer. Now, when we're doing like real-time recording, so if the only track that I am actually have record enabled is selected, all of the tracks will run at a buffer size higher than the selected track. So when I go to select a particular track, that track, so let's say if I come over here to this particular track, and this has like a really heavy duty plugin that takes a lot of latency and a lot of horsepower. So let's say, okay, we come over here to the vocal chain, and we can see that when we have this particular track activated and I have the ASIO guard on. So what ASIO guard with the constrained delay compensation is, since this, we can think of it as really the only track that needs critical low latency monitoring is the ones that are going to be record enabled. So the ASIO guard is going to show all the tracks that are selected, and will give you an idea so that when I have my ASIO guard turned on or my constrained delay compensation on, you may notice that the vocal chain, which is a high latency plugin because it does so much, will get disabled by default. So ASIO guard allows for the tracks that are selected or record enabled to process and run at a smaller buffer size, whereas all the other tracks will run at a higher buffer size. So if you see that the ASIO guard is running high, you can often just kind of mitigate it by just selecting another track. But you'll notice that like when you're recording and the track is record enabled, that when we're recording MIDI, when we're recording audio, that we've kind of chosen that particular track to run at a smaller buffer size so that the rest of the track has more headroom for audio processing. All right, so we see DaVinci Girl, and she just says, what's about next Friday? So in the United States, this Friday will be is a holiday, so we won't be having a live stream on Friday. And we see also from DaVinci Girl, is there any Zoom session? So the Zoom session will be today, starting about an hour and 5 minutes from now. All right, we see Michael Teams has granted Rick at Bratman Studio 1 gallon of lemon meringue pie ice cream. And Soren has received 1 gallon of peanut butter crunch ice cream. Good flavors. All right, we see Brian Sawyer. Have to learn everyone's new names. Is just sending greetings from Yuma, Arizona. Hope you're well. All right, so we see a question from Soul Sound Official. Hi, Greg. How to get VariAudio linked to an audio event? It doesn't get linked for me. And if there's other options to pitch correcting while playing and to be able to back from inside VariAudio, thanks. All right, so if we just double click on a particular file, that will launch the sample editor. Now, in the sample editor, you'll see different tabs. One of the tabs will be VariAudio. So, and once you see like often the keys on the left-hand side, that's usually a good indication that you're in the VariAudio tab. So I'm going to select the VariAudio tab. And now when I click here on this icon, it's going to automatically do the analysis and show us VariAudio right there. So you have to double click to make sure that the sample editor is open. Go to the VariAudio tab, and this is only going to work on audio, so not MIDI, not instrument tracks. But then click on the VariAudio tab and click here for it to do its analysis, and then the VariAudio will be available for you to use. All right. All right, we see John Costigan on from Kenosha, Wisconsin. Thanks for joining us. All right, Uno Momento wants everyone to whack the like button. All right, so we see W. Thompson, 007 says, hi Greg, love what you're doing. Can you show me how to create an expression map for instruments like Contact? It's already, don't already have expression maps created. So we did that a little earlier, so I know by the time you ask this, we may not have gotten to it. All right, Rick Ballantyne just says, love the expression maps in Cubase 15, Greg. Happy composer here. It's great. Always wonderful to see you on. Hope you and your family are well. All right, so we see a question from Tim Weinheimer. It says, I can't figure out how to delete my instrument rack from my project song. All right, so let's say if I come over here, we add an instrument. So let's say we want to add an instance of backbone. Okay, so if it's an instrument rack, so if we come over here to the VSTIs, we could scroll down and I'll add a rack instrument. So let's add a backbone here as well. We'll add a MIDI track to it. All right, so we have a MIDI track that's kind of associated, and we see this is an instrument track, so we have this icon, and MIDI track is being routed out to this particular instrument here. All right, so if I wanted to get rid of that instrument in the rack, all you'd have to do is make sure that you have the VSTI tab selected. So we could, again, select this, go to the name here, and just choose no VST instrument. And then that rack will disappear, and you could also just, and if we undid that, so let's say if we add our rack instrument back, so let's say we add backbone, we create a MIDI track. Okay, so as soon as we are here, this is our MIDI track. So if I delete the MIDI track itself, since the MIDI track could be going to any destination, it's not tied specifically to an instrument, even though it's routed to backbone. So if I remove the selected track, that won't remove the instrument rack. But if I come here to the instrument rack and choose no VST instrument, then that instrument in a rack will disappear, Tim. All right, so we just see from Onan 4453 says how I used Ghost Arpeggio. So let's say if we add a MIDI track here or instrument, doesn't matter. We will come over, and if you want to do like ghost note arpeggios, so let's come over here. We're going to quickly define, let's say, okay, I want this to, we'll say we're going to use the editor scale, and I'll say, okay, let's make this A major. So now we will say snap pitch editing. So if I want it to come over here, I'm going to try to put in a C natural. It's not going to allow me to put in a C natural because C natural isn't in the key of A major. But I could now just kind of put in, different arpeggios. So if we switch, let's say to quarter notes here, now I could only put notes in. Like I could put an F sharp, I could put an E, but I can't put an F natural because that's not in key. So once we have the snap pitch editing, I can't put in a note that's out of key. But a lot of times it's great to have notes that are out of key to give you certain flavors as well. All right, so see Jazzy just mentioned it. It says expression maps finally advanced and easy to set up status with individual articulation track delay settings. All right. So we see Randy Lee Music on from Texas. Thanks for joining us. All right, I'm going to paste the Zoom link one more time. And I will show it on the screen for people as well. So this is going to be the meeting ID. This will happen in about an hour. It's going to be live, so we won't be able to watch it afterwards. If you're watching a replay, this probably won't work. But for people that are watching a replay to get the Zoom link while the chat is updated, now you can see that. All right, so we see from just from W. Thompson 007 says, where are these maps available for download? So many companies will post the expression maps on their sites. You could also, so many companies will actually post their Cubase expression maps online. So there's not an official repository for, for third-party expression maps. When we're dealing with Hallian can automatically generate expression maps for you. So, but you could check with the individual manufacturer's site as well. All right, Michael Teams has granted my family and myself 1 gallon of pumpkin pie ice cream. Thank you for the kind words, Michael. It means a lot. All right, we have Chuluminaire joining from Northern California. All right, Thermonuclear War joining, saying hi from Serbia. Thanks for joining us today. All right, so we see how do I set picture to numerous tracks within Wavelab. It says also I still haven't found the album wizard in Wavelab. So maybe, Vince, if you're going to be on the Zoom, maybe you could share your screen and I could just kind of enable it for you real quick. You're probably like one mouse click away from happiness where both of these options are. So if we go to Wavelab and let's say I do just a quick open this up. All right, so we have my montage. So I think what your screen and what you shared on the screenshot, your screen was kind of looking like this with your montage. So try going to the tool windows and go to metadata, and that should probably tuck this down and give you like your metadata window. And here we could just go to, let me just go to my album wizard here first. So once we open up that particular tool window from the tool windows menu, so go all the way up to the top, click on edit, or let me just do the album wizard first. I'll go to my album wizard, so that will show up at the same time. And now when we go to the metadata, we could edit. And we'll say, okay, and here we could just put in pictures with the particular songs that are selected. But if you're on the Zoom social in about 54 minutes, I'd be happy to just kind of remotely log onto your system so we get these windows visible for you. All right, Thermonuclear Wars, giving Michael Teams a big coconut ice cream. All right, so we see a question. I have a problem with Synchron Player in Cubase 15. Everything runs smooth in Cubase 14. I don't have a license of Synchron Players at the East-West or which library it is. But if you want to let me know which library it is, I could see if other people reported it. All right, Tommy Mill asks, hi Greg, can I save a folder with multiple instruments as a preset in Cubase 14 Pro? Greetings from Switzerland. So let's come over here. Let's do a new project here. All right, so let's put a Groove Agent SE. Put a Hallian Sonic. We'll put 2 Hallian Sonics. And we'll do a retro log. Okay, so if I wanted to save all these as a single entity, what I could do is I'll just come over here. I'm going to select these particular files. I will go to my file menu and we'll say export, and we'll say export selected tracks. All right, so we could include the parts or the media. So I'll come over here. We'll call it Tommy Mill. I'm going to save it to my desktop. Okay, so I'm going to close this particular project. We won't save it. I'm going to do a new project. And now what I want to do is, so we exported selected tracks and we import what we call a track archive. So I'm going to go to my desktop. We'll just switch it over to view by date added. And I come over here, I could select all, and now all of my instruments will be saved in one single entity to be recalled in other projects. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Tommy. All right, we see Peter joining from Montreal. Says, greetings from a busy IKEA, Canada. Never leave your Cubase live stream at home. All right, so you see Onin4453 says, I'm waiting 40 minutes to get my question. So I thought we may have done it, but we go through. All right, so you see the Ghost Arpeggiator, we answered. Let me just go through. Make sure I didn't miss any other questions. Just scrolling back through time. But sometimes you have a lot of questions to go through. So I think I just saw the one about the ghost note arpeggios, and maybe, and I think that's the only question I've seen. Just reading back through it again. Yeah, so that's the only question I've seen, Onan, was on how I used Ghost Arpeggio. So maybe the question, sometimes questions don't come through for some reason, or maybe there's too many characters in your question. I think there's a 200 character limit. But let me know if I missed your question or if anyone else sees it. All right, so we see Val just says, thanks a lot, Greg. That is super helpful here. I have 42 hearts. All right, so Soft Clip Q says, with the automation updates in Cubase 15, I really wish there's a way to hide read and write in the console on the bottom of the channels. So is it like when we're in the channel view here that you want to hide that? So this will be kind of fixed like normal channels. If it's on this particular view, like on the track controls, you know, you could just come over here and go to the track control settings. So if it's with that, you could say, okay, record, enable, and monitor. We could choose to make those not visible, you know, so, or I guess it's the read and write automation. Let me just, so if you want to do read and write, you know, we could just choose to remove those from, so we don't see it there, but I think the channel settings will be fixed. All right, so we have Stephen Mike 1 saying hello. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we have Saim Manuel 8727 says, hi Greg, how can I record MIDI zero quantized just like I record it in audio with zero quantized? I've tried various suggestions like turning off the grid, auto quantize, but it doesn't work. So, you know, if MIDI will always be recorded without any quantization unless the auto quantize is turned on here. So if I have a particular, let's say if I load up a Groove Agent instance here, and let me just, all right, so let's say if I want to record like roughly with the click, all right, so when I want to record, so let's say we'll come over here, we'll put it into bars and beats, and I'll have my click going, and I'll play roughly with the click. All right, so let's say I'll just, all right, so I'll arm this track for record, so let me just turn on. And I'll just make my click a little louder. All right, so let's say we record it roughly with the click. Now I'm going to do something. I'm going to record the, so, and now if I put, let's say, what I want to do is I'm going to add an audio track, and I'm going to set the input from Groove Agent. Okay, so I'm going to record the audio and the MIDI simultaneously. So we're not going to quantize anything. So unless AQ is turned on, it's not going to, do any quantizing. So let's say, so I'm going to record both the audio and MIDI. So I'm not really completely off the grid. All right, so now when we play back the MIDI and the audio that was captured, so I'm going to go ahead and quantize the MIDI now. So now we'll play the audio and the MIDI together. So we can see that that's off, and if I undo or reset the quantize, so we'll come over here to reset quantize, we go back to the original value, and now they're lined up again. So MIDI will not be quantized unless the AQ is turned on here in the transport. So it's going to be recorded free just like audio. Okay, so we see from soft clip Q says he means where it loops back in reverse, I think. All right, so thank you for that clarification. So let's say if I wanted to, I'll just kind of draw a note in here. So if that's like a ghost quantize, kind of odd term for it, but let's say I want to take this one particular note here. So okay, so let's say if I go to my sampler track, so I'll go to my sampler control. All right, so now when I come here, now if we want that to loop where it will just, we'll say, okay, alternate. Or if I wanted to just kind of make that smaller. So if you wanted to do where it loops back in reverse, you could just do alternate, and that's pretty typical sampler terminology. So let me know. Thanks for the clarification, soft clip. All right, so we see John makes beats. This is referring to once the sample plays fully forward, it begins to play backwards. So yeah, you just do it inside of the sampler track, and now again just all right. Thank you for the clarification, John makes beats. All right, Michael Teams wants everyone to smash the like button. Yeah, I see Jazz Dude just mentioned usually ping pong is usually kind of left and right speakers, but forward to reverse is often kind of alternate, is typical sampler terminology, but some programs will use different terminology. All right. All right, so we see from Bratman Studio. Let me just, sorry, my chat field jumped. Trying to catch up. It says, hey Greg, somehow my previous post disappeared. Tomorrow the Mac Studio 4M or the M4 Max will show up. 64 gigs, 1 terabyte, external 4 terabyte SSD on the Thunderbolt 5 port. Should be snappy then the downloads. Congratulations. You have some time over Thanksgiving holiday to get everything up to speed. All right, so we see from Flyv says, nice, thanks Greg. Now I found the album wizards. It's great. All right, why Val's looking for anybody in Egypt that he can link up with. All right, Roland Steph says, hi Greg, I was wondering why I never use step editing. Then I realized I can't see the icon anywhere. My Cubase Pro 15, is it an optional preference, and how does step editing work, please? All right, so let's say we want to do step entry, so I can come over here. So you may have to, depending on your screen resolution, if you right click here, make sure that you have step input checked. So and it'll look like a little set of stairs going up, like steps. Just clever. All right, so now when we come over here, if we want to do step entry, we click and we get a little blue line. I could set my value here. So let's say I want to do quarter notes. And let's say, okay, now I want to do eighth notes. And I could also, if I have my rhythmic value here set to eighth notes, I can, before I release the key, I can just hold down my right arrow to extend rhythmically. So we can just kind of come right over here and switch the different rhythms. And if you want to now put in like hi-hats on eighth notes, I can move the blue line back and put in, so let's say I want to put in maybe, if I didn't like, if I undo and I want to put in hi-hats again, it will move it back. So now I can put in eighth note hi-hats, and you could put your step entry. So if you don't see the step input, just right click and it could be, and you'll see the different options. It can't fit every option on every screen resolution, so if you don't see it, and if it's like checked and it's maybe off way to the right, you could just take the step input here and move it wherever you want it to. So you could just say, okay, now my step input is more, when it's up higher, it's over farther to the left of the list, and you could just kind of move it as you see fit. So you could rearrange the order of the icons. Okay. So Roland Sapp says, hi Greg, I was wondering why I never use, okay, so we see that. Says, we see a question, Steinberg team, please add option of FL and please let the update the DAW free after buying. You know, so it takes a significant amount of work to be able to come up with new features. So I think it's fair. It's like, yeah, when I buy a car, I don't necessarily expect, you know, after 2 years to get a free new car. I realize that there's a lot of effort that goes into creating the software, and I think that the development pace of Steinberg software is well beyond the pace of development with any other program, and that you'll see that Steinberg is actually generating kind of the feature sets that all the other programs are kind of mimicking and hurrying up to mimic. So, you know, I know it's a popular thing just to get free updates for life. But, you know, our developers work really hard and we want to always come up with a great product. You don't have to update, but we think that like many of the features that come included with the updates are stuff that you would often purchase separately, to get the Ultra Shaper plugin, to get the pitch shifter plugin, to get omnivocal. You don't get those types of tools with other programs. So while you may get free updates, you still are lacking a lot of functionality in other programs that you not only get new feature sets, but new plugins, new sounds that you don't have to purchase separately. It's part of the update. So you get a lot of additional plugins, sounds, new features. So I think it's a fair business model. If you don't like the particular update, you can skip. You don't have to update. So, but, realize that everyone, like probably, if you're doing music for someone, you don't necessarily do the second album free after you did the first album. You don't do the third album free. If someone is hiring you to play guitar or program beats, and you give them a good deal on the first one, you don't probably allow that client to have, you're not going to be giving free beats to that client for the rest of your life. So that would be my guess. All right, so he says, after buying Cubase 12 Pro, it's asking me to pay more. I just feel like I wasted my money in professional DAW. Cubase, who you say is advanced music production DAW. So I think there's, lots of people are, getting significant new features all the time. And, and it's probably been 4 years since you update it. So there will be costs to get new features. And I think that's fair for everyone. So. So we see from Val, says, does anybody know if it's true that Gigi D'Agostino uses Cubase? And can you verify, Greg? So I'm not familiar who that is. I might be able to do some research on it. So. All right, so we see from Soul Sound Official, says, question, I know how to open VariAudio. My question was to pitch correcting while playing the song as it goes, and when using the top timeline of VariAudio, doesn't go back where or in project unlinked. All right, so I think I understand. So, all right, so say if we're doing VariAudio editing, sorry for misunderstanding. Okay, so let's say if I'm... All right, so sometimes it may be like, okay, I want to do an edit here, so I move this note, and then it's not necessarily updating. So there is, if you hit the F key, that will, so let's say I do my edit here. Now it won't update, but if you hit the F key to follow, and there's a setting here, so if you see like the little auto scroll setting, so one of the options is to suspend auto scroll when editing, because it could be like really annoying. It's like, okay, I want to fix this particular note, I want to be able to I want to fix the pitch on this, and I need to get the beginning of that I'm still doing editing, and it scrolled away. So now I could just have that choice of being able to say, okay, I want to get this and make that change, and then I could just hit F and we're right back to where we were. So there is just a setting here. If it's like, VariAudio is stopping when you're doing editing in real time, just uncheck suspend auto scroll when editing. So that way it will continue to auto scroll, And as you work with that, as you scroll, it's going to stop the scrolling when you do an edit, so that your edit doesn't disappear from your view. So let me know if that is understanding. All right, so I think that makes sense. Reading some of your other comments. All right, so we see Tommy Mills says, thanks, Greg. Really appreciate your clear explanations. You're welcome. Thanks for being on the live stream. All right, so we have Manfig joining from, listening in from Santa Barbara, California. It says, just got Cubase Pro 15, and this is so awesome. So many new features to explore. I love it. Thank you, Greg. So I didn't do much in actually making Cubase 15. We'll give the props and the credit to Steinberg. So they do a wonderful job with that. All right, let's see, Dajin Tekit says, hi Greg, when I try to add instruments, I only get groove agents and synth 3 within. Are those the only default content? So realize that once you, so say if we add an instrument, all right, so we could think of Halligan Sonic as kind of a player of multiple instruments. So you see we have Retrolog, Pad Shop, in Halligan Sonic under synths, you'll have Groove Agent SE. But when we go to Halligan Sonic, and you open that up and you say, okay, let's go look at our instruments. So here you would see like a number of different instruments that are available. So you get the Halligan Sonic collection, you would get like Trip, Flux, so you get, and you get Iconicus Sketch. So we could think of in Writing Room Synth. So there's a number of instruments that are accessed from within Halligan Sonic 7. So just because you see 3 instruments, we could think of Halligan Sonic 7 as a synth and sample playback engine. So if you wanted to come over here, like one of the ones that you're going to get, is Verve. You get, Writing Room Synths for like really cool kind of 90s. And if you want it like your kind of bread and butter kind of rompler tones, you could just kind of come over here to like the Halligan Sonic selection. So you get a number of different instruments. Explore all the different options that you have within Halligan Sonic 7. And while it's one instrument, it's kind of the engine to play back multiple instruments together. And check out like Trip and Flux, as Jazz Dude mentioned. All right, so we see Jay from Secret Studios. All right, so we see Soul Sound Official. Says, why when organizing track presets and FX presets in Windows 11 FX presets directory are in documents and track presets are in app data, etc. When modifying names or order, I have to reboot the computer to get it refreshed inside Cubase 15. Tried MediaBay, etc. It doesn't refresh in real time. Why? So it could be that, when you're adding, so it goes into that location so that all of your track presets are available for future Cubase versions and later Cubase versions. But check if you go over here to settings and go to MediaBay. It could also be that you might have this preference checked when it says scan folders only when MediaBay is open. So check that and make sure that that isn't checked. All right. All right, so I'm going to jump over since we only have a few more minutes, and let's get to some of the questions that were mailed in. We'll get to those where we run out of time. And I'm going to paste the Zoom link coming up. All right, so let me paste that. Okay, so we had a question. It was on Facebook that it seemed like a lot of people didn't notice, so I wanted to share this. How to easily set up exports to different sample rates, bit depths, and file formats. So let's say we have a song here, and I needed to deliver, let's say, a 16-bit 44.1, a 24-bit 48K for video, maybe, and an MP3 file. So to do that, I would just come over here. Let's go to your export audio mixdown, and we could say, okay, I'm going to do just my single export, and we could actually save kind of different presets. So let's say, okay, I want it to be a WAV file, 16-bit 44.1. We could save a preset, so I could say 16-bit 44.1. Then I'm just going to click Add to Queue. So we're going to say, okay, let's make our stereo out, and we're going to add that to the queue. Now I want to do 24-bit 48K. So I could save a preset where it's WAV 48K 24-bit. Let's add to queue, and let's come right over here and say, okay, I want it to be a 320K MP3. And again, once I choose my file format, the sample rate and bit depth, add it to the queue. And now at this point, we could just say start the queue export, and that would export multiple files all at once without having to do each one independently. Okay, let's go on. Next question. Okay, I think this is Jay from Secret Studios. So I hope this message finds you well. I'd like to ask, if you don't mind, for an expanded answer on a question from Friday in which I asked for a MIDI CC value range between set ranges. I should ask more specifically, could you please show compression of values outside of these ranges to a compression which would bring all values proportionally to a range, such as the example I wish there were setting to set all MIDI ranges, but I don't think that exists for CC values if I'm wrong. I'd also love to know that. All right, so I think the question was from Friday's live stream, like if we had if we want to take MIDI CCs and kind of chop off the low end and the bottom end. So let's say if we had notes, all right. All right, so let's say we had CC data here, and I think the question was originally we wanted to basically kind of just compress, get rid of the lows and the highs. All right, so one of the things that you could do is I'm going to just select all of the events, and if I go to the right-hand corner here, so let's say I could just compress the MIDI CC data visually, just like that, without having to do anything. So if we wanted to kind of tame the lows and the highs, I could basically just kind of compress those particular values right there just to get a sense. So if we want it to be very tight, or we want kind of the lows and the highs to be exaggerated, you could just come here visually just by grabbing the right center edge. So again, you could just simply select, so you don't have to do any fancy logical editor to get what you want. Just right click in the controller lane and say we want to select all of the events. You'll see that as when we have the object, or when we have the selection tool, and I sneak over to the center edge here, that we could basically compress the highs and the lows of our MIDI CC data like so. Let me know if that's helpful for you, Jay. Says, I have a question. Next question. The question would be about the M1 Mac Pro. I transferred all content to an external C drive, 2 gigabytes, hopefully 2 terabytes, as my laptop only had 512. The video on YouTube states create a folder named Steinberg content on the external drive. I did that. The only thing that shows up in MediaBay under loops and samples is Icon Beat Agent, Groove Agent 4, nothing else. I could click on the file browser in MediaBay and everything is there, but nothing opens. Can you please advise? And it says, all right, so when you do this, there's a utility. So what you'd want to do is just come over and let's go to, and you'll see a program called the Steinberg Activation Manager. Okay. So, and it's this program, it's installed with Cubase, and this will keep track of all of your content. All right, so when you go to, let's say, your Finder window, all you'd have to do is, let's see if I have any in my downloads folder. But when you find like the .vst sound file, okay, so when you come here and you go to your hard drive and then just right click and say open with Steinberg Library Manager, or you could just double click, and then once you do that, that will make the link between the Cubase and where all of the content is on your particular drive. So again, you'll just come over here and just say, okay, I want to come over here, and we'll say open with the Steinberg Library Manager. That will open it up, and you can see. Now sometimes if it's on a new drive and maybe your content was on the system drive and it had moved, it'll ask, you may get a little pop-up window, and then you'll get the option to move it to the default location, or you could choose to register in place. So choose register in place, and then that link between Cubase and all the content will be established. So you may do it for each folder, but just find your VST sound files on your external drive and double click to launch the library manager, and then register in place, and then Cubase will be able to find all of your content. We see next comment says more storage. Pretty soon it'll be a terabyte of Steinberg content that you put on an external drive and it doesn't open. Thank you. Cubase is getting where you have to have a supercomputer to make it work. So I don't think you need a supercomputer to make it work, but if you want to have access to lots of different sounds and samples, storage space is helpful. All right, another kind of related question says, hello Greg, I'm having so much never before problem with Cubase as Apple has so much gigabytes of update OS. Steinberg has so much gigabytes of content. Cubase developers might want to include a jump drive with all the content because it's so difficult to transfer the content with an extra internal drive or external drive when every other software company content is working. It's not as easy as just clicking move on the library, register the content. It does not show up, respond to MediaBay on an Apple computer or PC. So, if you want to just select, if we come over here, we could, it is really that easy just to come over here and you want to click and you could do multiple files. Just click here in the move folder. So you say, okay, I want all of these. And I just did it with someone just like 2 nights ago, and then click on move, select the location, and then it will move all of the content for you. So really that's all you'd have to do is just click in the little box next to move, then you can move multiple libraries together all at once. All right, and I don't think that we would, in the comments about, will Steinberg be releasing everything on a jump drive? I wouldn't see that. As for a while we did have like DVDs as installers that were available, and then no one bought them because everyone was just downloading it online. So and if you do it as a flash drive, do you send it as USB-A, USB-C? Do you send it as what format? So, and currently all the Steinberg software there aren't physical boxes of it anymore since Cubase 14. So everything will be working just with downloads. But, once you get it working with the download manager, which is pretty simple, select that, move it over, then you should be fine. All right, so we have another question. So I have a quick question regarding MediaBay for today's Club Cubase live stream. If you select a loop in MediaBay and link it to Project Tempo, it'll usually do a good job of detecting the tempo and length of the loop and play the sample back correctly at tempo. However, if MediaBay interprets the tempo or length of the loop incorrectly, for example, if it detects an 8-bar loop as a 5-bar loop, resulting in a loop playing out of sync with the project, is there a way to manually correct it? For example, if we know the tempo or the length of the loop, can we tell that to MediaBay to have it reanalyze the loop? So MediaBay isn't going to reanalyze the loop. What MediaBay will do is, as you're looking at your particular loops, it has what's called metadata. So like when you buy loops from companies, the companies will put a tempo stamp information, how many bars a particular loop is. So let's say if I want to come over here to, let's say, so as we look at, different particular files here, so let's say, we just, let's come over here to my VST sound. Let's have some filter on. Yeah. Okay, so when you come over to, like, let's say, okay, we come to Cinematic Odyssey and we come over here. So all of that information is provided by the sample manufacturer. So MediaBay isn't doing analysis of the loop. We can update that information if that information is wrong. So when we come over, we could just say, okay, we want to select that particular file, and if we have the right zone of the MediaBay open, here you can see the bit depth, how many measures, what the time signature is, how many beats, what the tempo is, and we could change that. But MediaBay doesn't do that analysis. MediaBay, the company that provides the particular sample loops, will do that. Or you could add it in when you select the particular file. If it's like you're making your own loops, you can automatically make that particular loop match, and you could define the particular tempo and number of bars and the time signature directly here in MediaBay and store that data itself. So, but MediaBay doesn't do the analysis. MediaBay is just reading that metadata from the loop files. Okay, another question. Next question is, when MediaBay scans my sample folders, does it try to auto-categorize samples as it scans? Or are there category and subcategory attributes only changeable manually? I'm noting that some of my folders, which contain Foley samples, have been automatically given many random categories such as human, footsteps, or paper. Do you know if there's a way to turn off MediaBay auto-categorization? Or is this potentially metadata from the WAV files themselves that somehow made its way into the MediaBay category attribute? So again, MediaBay is going to be reading those particular attributes and that metadata from the file. So you can say, I'm looking for human footsteps, I'm looking for dog footsteps, or cat footsteps, or bear footsteps. So that, and having that metadata and being able to access it. And if we come over, let's say we want to go to our defined, we could come over here. So when we go to like the settings, we could see all the different, these are kind of standard metadata fields that we have within MediaBay that can be recognized, and you could also make your own metadata values for the particular loops as well. But you get a number of different attribute categories. So MediaBay isn't automatically generating the meta tags. It's just, the metadata with all the info. It's just simply working on extracting the metadata that was provided by the sample manufacturer. All right, let's jump back to our live questions. Thanks for sending questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right. All right, so we see from, is it Michelle or Mikkel Hovel? It says, hello, Greg. Can you please demonstrate the ultimate technique for precision tempo mapping in Nuendo, especially when dealing with complex layered audio, i.e. whoosh hit sound effects, orchestral hits? Specifically, how do you manually place hit point grid with the sub-millisecond accuracy onto the vertical onset attack of a dense waveform? And also, can you show the recommended zoom level in workflow when used to visually confirm the precision before performing the time warp? Thank you very much. All right, so let's say, like some of these sound like a good, like something like kaleidoscope. So we'll just come over to new project. All right, so one of the loop libraries here, so let's just grab like an atmosphere sound. All right, so let's say as we're so I would probably, you don't have to zoom in like kind of full way. So let's say if we're just kind of doing this manually, we're listening to it. Now, sometimes, the auto detection would work great if it's kind of rhythmic stuff. But if it's kind of like, where there's no like rhythmic sensibility, you may want to come over and let me just come over here real quick. Let's switch to our warp, and we're going to do our warp grid, and maybe you just kind of look at it visually. So I'm going to make sure that the event itself is not in musical mode, so that when I change the tempo that it's not stretching. So now when I just want to grab my warp tool, and I would probably just kind of like, like right there seems like it's maybe like just listening to like the rhythm of the change of pitch. So I would maybe kind of zoom in. It's probably going to be maybe like at this transient here. And then when I do this will just kind of put in. So maybe I want measure 4 to be here. And you could just kind of play back with and see if this. All right, and we say, okay, maybe that's, we want that to be here. So, as we kind of work, so, if it's something that's going to be like swooshes and stuff like that, you may just have to get a sense, and after a while, I think a lot of times, sound designers, for the most part, started as musicians, and when they work, they'll have kind of a rhythmic sensitivity to their work, so that, when it's kind of building up or slowing down. And then, like when they have like an impact, like on a release, at that point, you could just simply kind of time and get the feel. And I've seen lots of TV and film composers will just kind of watch a scene, and they'll kind of watch a scene and just kind of tap, with their hand just to see if they get like a pulse from watching a scene. And it's very similar to make tempo maps for kind of non-rhythmic audio as well. So, and if you have a file that you want to send me, I'd be happy to kind of take a look at it for you. All right, Roland Stuff says, many thanks for explaining step input. For me, that could be a time saver. It helps me a lot because I don't play keyboards well. All right, so we see Steve Green says, hi, Greg and Hallian. If a sample I use has oscillators, is there a way of finding how many beats per minute the oscillators are in order to allow Groove Agent to follow the sample? So generally, most samples don't have oscillators. When we, like in Hallian, if we come over here, like let's say, okay, we want to add, and we'll go to, let's say, Hallian here. So Hallian can obviously do samples plus synthesis, but if it's, let's say, if we want to do like an analog synth, I'll come here and we say, okay, what kind of oscillator do I want? Do I want triangle wave, or do I want saw wave? And at this point, maybe I want to couple that filter. So let's, we can come over and just say, okay, now let's add a filter type. So, I mean, we could have LFOs that will be kind of, generally like, the oscillators could have LFOs, which will be rhythmic, but generally like the samples themselves don't really have oscillators, or I see oscillations. So let's say if we have, let me just, so let's say if I want to come here and, sorry for my misunderstanding on that. So let's say if we go to maybe like a modulator here and say, okay, I want to control this parameter. So at this point, like you could, if you have something like that, you could, do a tempo detection or something like that and just kind of find out. So here we're just doing like a modulator on the event. So if you have a sound like that, you could probably, once it's recorded as audio, so you could just simply figure out kind of the rhythmic pulse just doing a tempo detection with that. Sorry for my misunderstanding on that. Okay, so we get one more question. All right, Bratman Studios says, hey, Greg, can one open more than one drop-down menu at a time in the inspector? Thanks. All right, so let's say I have this. So yeah, if you right-click, you could say expand sections exclusively. So now only one is open at a time. But with 14, you could also right-click on an inspector tab and say set up section, and you could uncheck expand sections exclusively, and now you could have multiple sections open. So if you wanted to see both inserts and sends open simultaneously, so just right click on an inspector tab and uncheck expand sections exclusively. All right, so with that, we're going to migrate over to the Zoom social. We're just at 3 o'clock. Sorry I didn't get through all the questions, but we will be doing the next live stream 1 week from today. It's a holiday in the United States on Friday, so I'm actually going to take a holiday. It's been kind of crazy work the last few months. But let's go ahead and start the Zoom social. And this is just a great area to kind of meet people that are on the live streams. So we'll go ahead and start the meeting here. All right. All right. See Michael Marshall joining. Great to see you on. And I'll paste the Zoom social link one more time here. Good to see Michael.
Howdy there.
Michael Marshall joining. Great to see John Barry, Brian Sawyer. And I'll paste the Zoom social link one more time here. Good to see Michael. See Rick.
Howdy, Brian.
John Barry, Brian Sawyer.
Barry, Brian Sawyer.
See Vince. See Michael.
Hi, Rick.
See Rick.
Howdy, Brian.
John Barry, Brian Sawyer. Barry, Brian Sawyer. See Terry Gray. All right, so we have a Zoom user. I'm just going to mute you for a second here so we don't get any feedback, because I think we have your mic is, we're hearing it through. We get unmuted once everyone's on.
It's the Barry.
I might have plans with a friend on Saturday.
We'll give a couple minutes to get people migrate over. All right, see Michael Teams joining.
Rick, did you have an uncle called Dell?
No, I did not.
Runaway was the tune.
Back in the day, there was a guy named, was it Scott Shannon or something, that was a famous LA DJ back in the day when I was like
all right, so Jazz
kid.
Dude joining. Great.
Okay.
And everybody asked me if I was that guy or if he was my dad or my cousin or uncle or something.
There was in the UK, there was a hit single in the 60s called Runaway by Del Shannon.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of people ask me about that too. That's right. Del Shannon.
How do you know he's not your father?
No, no, I would have
Tim Weinheimer.
enjoyed all those residuals.
Mr. Teams.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good to see everybody.
We're coming up slowly but surely. Michael, you never told me how your refurbished Kurzweil did.
Oh, it's doing fine. It's alive in the rack over there.
Yeah, perfect.
Actually doing quite well considering how old they are now.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the Kurzweils are like 35, 36 years old. No.
I have a K2000 up in the above the studio, still in its case. It has lost its audio, so I'm still considering to take it over and see if somebody can get it fixed.
I gave away my last synthesizer 3 months ago. It was a Roland Alpha Juno 2. I had in the 80s.
Somebody's still feeding back.
You're not hearing it?
Echoing.
Yeah, I don't hear
that's Greg, I think.
I don't hear.
Did you mute your YouTube feed or turn that off?
I'll mute my mic real quick and see if it makes a difference.
Mine's
No, I meant whoever's hearing the feedback, because I'm not hearing it either.
Not feedback, but echo from like a delay.
Right. I was asking you if you turned off your YouTube.
Let's blame it on Tim.
Yeah, I'm not hearing
There
it.
you go.
That's right.
I'm not here.
Yeah.
I closed my YouTube, so hopefully.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so did I.
All right, I'm going to end the live stream, and then everyone migrate over. So let me end the live stream, and then we'll be on Zoom here. All right. I'll turn my camera on. All right, great to see everyone. How's everyone doing?